Imagine spending your entire life mentally translating your thoughts just so other people can handle them,
Oh, yeah.
right? Like you temper your intensity, you water down your ambitions, you constantly explain your boundaries. It's honestly an exhausting way to live.
It's like being your own public relations manager 24/7.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Always managing the spin. But imagine walking into a room, sitting down, and just realizing the person across from you speaks your incredibly rare native language.
That is such a profound shift.
It is. You don't have to translate the weight of your commitment. They feel it in the exact same place in their bodies that you do. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring the architecture of a relationship where you never have to translate yourself.
Which is, frankly, something that completely rewrites the rules of how we interact. I mean, in a world full of these fleeting surface-level connections, we naturally tend to compartmentalize the people in our lives.
Oh, absolutely. We put them in boxes.
Right. Over here, you have the sanctuary, like the friend you go to for pure, unchallenging comfort when you just need to vent and eat ice cream.
The safe zone.
Exactly. And then over there, we have the school, the intensely driven mentor or colleague who constantly challenges you to level up, but maybe isn't the person you'd cry in front of.
Okay, let's unpack this because we are immersing ourselves today in an excerpted analysis titled Two Foundations, the Shared Architecture of the Golden Souls.
It's a fascinating piece of writing.
It really is. And our mission today for you, the listener, is to really look under the hood of the dynamic between Haliela Golden and Veronica Golden, because it's this genuinely rare human connection where those two boxes we just talked about, they absolutely collapse into each other.
They do. They completely merge.
Yeah, we are exploring what happens when a relationship is simultaneously your safest place to land and like your most rigorous curriculum, where you simply cannot separate the belonging from the becoming.
And, to understand how a relationship becomes this kind of dual-purpose engine, we really first have to examine the ground it's built on.
The foundation.
Right. Because most people experience what we can call a gap in their relationships. Think about classic pairings in your own life, or even, I don't know, pop culture. We constantly seek balance through opposites.
Oh, for sure. One person is the light, breezy, spontaneous one, while the other is like super heavy, serious, and loves a good itinerary.
Exactly. It's the classic sitcom trope.
The messy, chaotic roommate and the highly organized, neurotic one, they have to cross that gap constantly to meet in the middle, just to keep each other sane.
And that gap is totally normal. But the text makes it clear that Haliela and Veronica do not have this gap.
Wait, really? No gap at all?
Not at the foundational level, no.
Yeah.
They share the exact same foundational architecture. It's described as a constitutional relationship with structure, discipline, and just this profound seriousness about life.
Wow.
They possess the identical orientation toward building something real. They share the exact same baseline.
So it's not about like being impressed by someone's resume or their accomplishments. It's about recognizing their underlying operating system.
Yes. And what's fascinating here is the psychological concept of recognition. This shared architecture creates a baseline of recognition that is genuinely so rare.
Because usually we have to perform for people.
Right. To be recognized without having to manage the other person's perception, without having to present that composed, heavily curated front, to just be truly seen underneath all of that armor is one of the deepest forms of human love available.
Because let's face it, we all have a dinner party version of ourselves. You know,
100%.
the version that smiles, performs, keeps the conversation light. But Hollyella and Veronica, they basically bypass that entirely.
They don't even bother with it.
Yeah. Before any of the daily events of life even factor in, they see the actual person underneath, moving through the world with all the immense weight and depth that that entails. I mean, they understand why certain things matter so deeply to the other without ever needing like a PowerPoint presentation to explain it.
And that shared interior language is the bedrock.
Yeah.
It's literally the concrete slab they are both standing on.
Right. But having the same foundation doesn't mean you're the exact same person.
No, not at all.
In fact, if you put two highly intense, disciplined people in a room, you don't automatically get peace. You often get fire.
We get a lot of friction. Yeah.
Because you can pour the exact same concrete slab, right? But you can build a heavily fortified bunker on one and a wildly overgrown greenhouse on the other.
That is a great way to look at it. And that divergence is exactly what gives this relationship its immense momentum. If they were identical in how they process the world, The relationship would just be stagnant.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's talk about why their instincts actually, like, violently clash. Let's look at how they process reality, according to the source.
Let's do it.
So, Haliella processes the world by constructing. She moves toward mastery. She basically manages her really complex emotional interior by routing it straight through productivity and purpose.
Her fundamental instinct is to contain.
Yes, containment.
Put simply, if she feels something overwhelming, she builds the structure for it. She channels that chaotic energy into the tangible satisfaction of building something that holds its shape.
Let's ground this for you guys listening. Imagine a massive, hypothetical, real-world crisis hits. Say, a catastrophic career failure or a sudden family emergency.
Okay, high-stress situation.
High stress. Haliella is the person who instantly opens a 5-point Excel spreadsheet, delegates tasks, and organizes the fallout.
Right. She contains the panic by building a managerial wall around it.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Veronica processes the world in the exact opposite way. She doesn't construct to process reality. She receives it. She absorbs it.
He's a receiver.
Yeah. She feels things at frequencies that most people simply cannot access. The text says she carries the full emotional weather of her environment in her physical body, sometimes without even consciously realizing she's doing it.
Wow. So where Haliella's instinct is to contain and build the wall, Veronica's instinct is to merge with the environment.
Right, but okay, I have to push back on this though, because conceptually, emotional weather sounds very poetic. It sounds beautiful.
It does sound nice on paper.
Right, but practically speaking, think about this in a living room. If one person's primary instinct in a crisis is to emotionally detach, build walls, and fix the logistics.
The spreadsheet approach.
Spreadsheet approach, yes. And the other person's instinct is to merge, absorb all the heavy sadness in the room, and just sit in it. I mean, doesn't that sound like a recipe for a massive, uncomfortable clash?
It sounds incredibly stressful.
How on earth is that a sanctuary? It sounds like an absolute nightmare of miscommunication to me.
Well, that is a completely valid reaction.
Right.
And what's crucial is that the source material doesn't pretend that discomfort doesn't exist.
Okay, so they do fight.
They absolutely clash.
Right.
But that severe divergence is exactly why they illuminate each other so profoundly.
Yeah.
It's not a clash that breaks the foundation. It's a clash that actively teaches them.
So how does that actually work? Like, walk us through that mechanism. How does the spreadsheet builder learn from the emotional sponge and vice versa?
You have to look at what they each lack naturally.
Huh.
Because Haliella's instinct is to contain and manage. She shows Veronica what it looks like to hold a firm boundary.
Ah, okay.
And crucially, she models holding that boundary not as an act of cold rejection or like anger, but as a quiet act of integrity.
Yeah.
She shows Veronica how to stay rooted in her own structure, even when the emotional pull of the outside world is overwhelmingly strong.
So Haliella acts as the anchor for Veronica.
Yes, exactly.
Like when the emotional storm is raging and Veronica is about to be swept away by everyone else's feelings, Haliella essentially demonstrates how to drop anchor and say, I am not responsible for absorbing this.
That is a brilliant way to put it. Veronica gets a front row seat to structural composure. And conversely, Veronica models something equally vital for Haliella. Well, because Haliella defaults to organizing her feelings into something productive. Putting her emotions to work. Veronica shows her what it looks like to simply feel an experience.
Just to feel it. To let it exist without fixing it.
To let an emotion move through her body without rushing to resolve it, organize it, or turn it into a task list.
Wow.
They are each holding the exact piece of the human experience that the other genuinely needs but struggles to access on their own. Even when it feels incredibly frustrating, they intuitively know they are holding something necessary for the other.
Which brings us directly to what happens when those opposing instincts inevitably collide under immense pressure. Because let's be real, they aren't just sitting around having beautiful breakthroughs every minute.
No, absolutely not.
We have to talk about the standoff. When two people of this depth and self-containment misalign, it isn't a minor surface-level squabble over whose turn it is to do the dishes.
Right. It echoes.
Yeah, it resonates deeply. The text points out that neither of these women processes conflict lightly, and neither releases tension quickly. Like, they don't just brush things off.
No, they hold on to it.
So under pressure, when things really hit the fan, how do these two totally different conflict styles actually interact? Like, who breaks first?
Well, let's look at it. Haliella fortifies. She draws her boundaries even more clearly. She goes exceptionally quiet. And she manages the situation from safely behind that architecture she has spent years perfecting.
Total lockdown.
Total lockdown. Veronica, on the other hand, feels everything more intensely under pressure. She becomes even more porous, absorbing all that unspoken dissonance right into her chest.
Oh, man.
It creates an incredibly stubborn standoff.
Just visualizing this, it's like watching an intricate, heavy vault lock mechanism. Under pressure, one piece of the lock turns sharply inward, right? Contracting to protect the fragile core.
Yeah.
And the other piece expands outward to absorb the shock of the impact. They are moving in completely opposite directions, pulling violently against each other, but they are still inextricably part of the exact same locking mechanism.
That's a really intense image.
And frankly, I can only imagine the tension at the dinner table when neither of them is willing to break the silence. Just two incredibly stubborn brick walls refusing to move.
Well, this raises an important question for all of us about how we view conflict in our own lives. We are heavily conditioned to view friction as a sign of incompatibility.
Right. We think fighting means it's broken.
Exactly. We think that if it's hard, if there's a silent, stubborn standoff, then something is fundamentally wrong with the relationship. But in this source material, this specific stubborn friction is framed as a hidden gift.
A gift, even when you're sitting in a room thick with unresolved tension. I don't know about that.
Yes, because of the mirror effect.
Yeah.
Each woman's default response to difficulty is precisely the mirror the other desperately needs held up in order to see themselves more honestly. Let's break down the psychology of that moment. When Hollyella retreats behind her walls and completely shuts down, and she looks across the table at Veronica's profound emotional openness in the middle of a conflict, she is forced to see her own avoidance.
Oh, wow.
She sees the messy, emotional landscape that she has learned to efficiently route around using logic.
She sees the vulnerability she's actively avoiding by being, quote-unquote, productive.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And when Veronica is completely overwhelmed, absorbing all that intense dissonance and feeling like she's drowning in it, she looks at Hollyella's structural composure.
And she sees an anchor.
She sees a living model for how not to be utterly consumed by everything she's feeling. They don't just comfort each other with empty platitudes like everything happens for a reason.
Right.
They're actively developing each other.
And doing it slowly, honestly, and in a deeply unglamorous way. I think unglamorous is the perfect word for this. Real growth rarely looks good on an Instagram feed, you know?
No, it really doesn't.
It's gritty, it's frustrating. It takes a massive amount of energy to engage in that kind of intense mutual development without just running away, which naturally leads us to wonder, what are they using all of this energy to build?
They are channeling that energy into an incredibly ambitious shared vision.
The phrase used in the text to describe them is absolutely stunning. They are not small-souled women.
I love that phrase.
Isn't it great? They both possess this deep, driving ambition to build something meaningful and lasting, something that reflects the sheer seriousness of being alive.
That phrase, not small-souled women, speaks volumes about their shared scale. Because in most relationships, when one person has a massive, imposing ambition or a highly intense personality, the dynamic often tilts.
Something gets overshadowed.
Right. The other person feels overshadowed, or the ambitious person feels a constant nagging pressure to tone themselves down just to make the other person comfortable.
I think almost anyone listening can relate to that feeling, that quiet pressure to shrink for the sake of social ease. You know, the pressure to play down your intensity, soften your goals, or hide your drive so you don't overwhelm the room or intimidate your partner or your friends. But in each other, Hollyella and Veronica have found someone who looks at the full, intimidating scale of their vision and meets it with genuine respect.
Not just polite tolerance.
Right. They don't need to justify their ambition to each other.
And that shared scale is further contextualized by a fascinating detail regarding their soul-level dynamic. And it's specifically tied to their birth years. There is a generational gap between them.
Okay.
The source notes that one is standing right at the threshold of a totally new world with all the forward-looking energy that entails, while the other is in the process of deeply integrating the whole of the world she has already moved through.
Now, a lot of people might look at an age or experience gap and assume one person is the teacher and the other is the student, like a mentorship.
That's the default assumption, yeah.
But the text makes it clear we need to throw away that linear framing. They aren't ahead or behind each other. To really picture this dynamic, throw out the cliche of two people climbing a mountain. Let's look at it like structural engineering.
Okay, I'm with you.
It's like building a massive suspension bridge.
Oh, I love that analogy. Let's
Yeah.
break that down.
So you have the massive, deeply rooted concrete pillars anchoring the entire structure into the bedrock, right?
Right.
That's Haliela. She's integrating the weight of the world, providing the unmovable foundation. And then you have the dynamic, highly tensioned, flexible cables stretching across the sky, absorbing the wind, the movement, and the shock of the new environment.
And that's Veronica.
Exactly. If the bridge were made entirely of rigid concrete pillars, the first earthquake would snap it in half. But if it were made entirely of flexible cables, it would just collapse under its own weight.
Because the friction between the rigid tension and the heavy grounding is literally what keeps the bridge in the air. They're differing positions, one integrating the past, one absorbing the future. They don't separate them.
Yeah.
Those positions are what allow them to span such a massive distance together.
They use the other's structural role to make sense of their own. Like Haliela needs the forward momentum and flexibility of Veronica to keep the structure alive and adapting.
And Veronica needs the deep, unyielding roots of Haliela so she doesn't get swept away by the winds of change.
They aren't trying to pull each other into the exact same role. They are just affirming that they are holding up the exact same bridge.
And what they're ultimately building together mirrors the absolute best of what they each came here to create individually. It's something real, something that holds its shape under extreme pressure.
Yeah.
Neither of them has ever had much patience for pretending, so they don't pretend this connection is simpler or lighter than it actually is. It requires massive upkeep.
So, what does this all mean? When we take all of these pieces, the shared baseline of rare recognition, the severe divergence in how they process a crisis, the unglamorous friction at the dinner table, and that massive shared ambition to build a suspension bridge rather than a footstool, we get a picture of a relationship that isn't running on fairy tale magic.
Not at all.
It's running on a quiet, repeated, unglamorous choice.
The active choice to stay, to not walk away when the locking mechanism jams.
Exactly. The choice to repeatedly remain in each other's orbit, despite the friction and despite the profound, sometimes exhausting depths they both carry. That choice is the architecture. It isn't just built on genuine recognition. It is built to last precisely because they keep choosing the friction over the easy way out.
We connect this to the bigger picture. The broader takeaway for all of us is profound. Relationships of this depth, the ones that serve as both the safest sanctuary and the most rigorous school, they demand two very difficult things.
What are they?
Well, first, they demand the raw courage to be fully uncompromisingly seen without the curated dinner party exterior.
Which is terrifying for most people.
Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
And second, they demand the intense emotional discipline to let someone else's fundamental differences challenge your own boundaries, rather than simply running away or shutting down when the friction starts.
That is the becoming and the belonging, beautifully wrapped into one complex package. We started this deep dive talking about the tension between the comfort of the sanctuary and the rigor of the school, and how Haliela and Veronica prove that the most profound connections flat out refuse to choose between the two.
They demand both.
They really do. They don't ask each other to shrink for the sake of social ease. And it makes you wonder, and this is what I want to leave you with today, to mull over on your own when you look at your own life. Are your closest relationships asking you to make yourself just a little bit smaller, a little bit quieter, just to keep the peace? Or are they demanding that you step into the full imposing architecture of who you really are?